Todd, whatever's in the chat, that's for you.
Okay. I'm multitasking.
All right, it's got about a minute. That is going to perfect. All right, well, it is 6 o'clock, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Let me get back on my screen. Everyone should be able to see the screen here, correct?
Yeah.
All right. First thing I'm gonna have everyone do is sign in. So if you could just take a quick moment and either use your phone and scan the QR code that's on the screen to get signed in, or go to your browser and type in that address, the bit.ly/cram exam, and that will get you signed in. So, and a couple of things there. A, I have to keep track of who we provide the session for, but B, it's also going to give you links to not only this recorded session on YouTube, which I am streaming live to YouTube so that it will be there, but also access to the playlist that has other sessions that we've done, because every session is slightly different people on different questions. We do change them up from time to time. So I'll give you about a minute to get signed in, and then we will move forward, and I'll introduce my co-hosts for this evening. All right. And if you didn't get a chance to get signed in now, this will pop up again later on in the session so that you can make sure you get signed in. But let's keep moving forward. All right. So I'm not going to do a whole lot of talking today, but the purpose of this session is that we want to help you pass your real estate exam. As I introduced Todd and Andrew, Andrew's going to give you a brief overview of Century 21 Sheets. Ultimately, we want to be a resource for new agents. We'll go through some test taking tips. And then the disclaimer that this is geared towards the Indiana real estate exam. State-specific questions are not the same in each state. And the main reason I put this disclaimer out there is because we do also promote the session on Facebook. So I just want to make sure that everyone's clear that this is for the Indiana real estate exam. So here's me. My name's Christopher. First and foremost, I'm a realtor. I currently manage our Avon office, and I'm the director of training for Century 21 Sheets. And prior to this, I spent 21 years in restaurant management. My contact information is on there, so you can feel free to reach out to me at any time. So Andrew, I will let you introduce yourself and give them a brief rundown of Century 21 Sheets.
Thank you, Christopher. Hey, everyone. My name is Andrew Huber. I'm the Director of New Agent Growth, but only for a bit. I joined Century 21 Sheets back in December, right around Christmas time. And before that, I worked for MyBoard for 9 years. I did a little call center, a little training. I worked in communications. I hosted a podcast, all kinds of cool stuff, but just fell in love with the industry, and I can't imagine doing anything else. What's important when we're talking about Cram for your exam and Century 21 Sheets, if I'm going to say anything, is what I would want to communicate is this is the relationship. This is us being partners. This is us working together for the collective goal being your success. And studying for the exam is no exception, and running a small business is another no exception. So this is just us doing what we can do, providing what we can so that you can be successful. And you can expect the exact same type of service and relationship and culture and all that great stuff if you chose to join us as a brokerage. So yeah, that's it for me. I'm going to go off. Todd, you're next. Sorry, that's my 5-year-old. Sorry.
So one of the cool things about Sheets is that they have a lending partnership with a mortgage company that they actually have partial ownership in. So you're going to have one of us at Milestone Home Lending in your physical office. You know, when we were kids, we were taught it's impolite to talk about the money. Well, what you're going to discover is that most people who want to buy real estate need to borrow money, and having an understanding of what's possible and having an understanding of who can and who can't before you spend a lot of your time and gasoline and energy with them is going to be really, really, really important. And then, you know, how much money and what does a payment look like and what does a payment include, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If I get to make all the rules in the world would be different. You would probably say the same things yourselves. But if I got to make all of the rules about studying for a real estate exam and being a successful realtor, your mandatory education would include a lot more about mortgage lending than it actually does. But it doesn't. So you're going to have to be able to tap into a resource where you can get a decent understanding of mortgage lending in order for you to be successful as a realtor. So that's part of why I'm on the Cram as well. There are some mortgage questions that you will be facing through getting your real estate license. There will be a lot more than that down the road. And having somebody to lean on to get your questions answered is going to be a big deal for you.
All righty, thank you. And last but not least, that's Farley James. That's my dogs. So Andrew's got his 5-year-old in the background. I've got a puppy. Well, he's not a puppy anymore, but he likes to just make an appearance at some point. So you might see him as well. So it looks like Todd's still at the office, so he shouldn't have any distractions. But yes, so, and Andrew did put in the chat, he's going to be the one reading most of the questions. I am homesick for the next few days, but I obviously didn't want to miss this session. Now this session is more fun for everyone if you participate. So we do prefer cameras to be on. Please come off mute to ask questions. Know that no question is a dumb question. But again, much more enjoyable for everyone and a lot of great conversation when you just ask questions and, you know, we talk through topics and things like that. So let's talk through some test taking tips. First of all, if you've completed the class and you haven't scheduled a date, schedule one now. And that just gives you something to work towards. You know, a lot of times I find when, you know, talking with people, I say, well, I'm going to take the next month or 2 months or whatever it is to study. And, you know, the first week goes by and they're like, I'm going to start studying next week. And then the next week, I'm going to start in a week. And then they get to that 2 week or that 2 month mark where they told themselves they were going to take it and they haven't studied at all. So they're like, well, I need another month to study. So if you give yourself a date, then you're more likely to hit that date. Pardon me, when you're answering questions, always trust your gut. Your gut's almost always right. Where we find that people run into issues with it, they start second guessing themselves and they go and they start taking answers that they had chosen correctly and making them incorrect answers. There are typically about 5 math questions on your exam. It does vary a little bit. But if math causes you anxiety and it's not your thing, do it all first or do it last. And here's another, maybe an unpopular opinion. At the end of the day, if it's going to throw your whole game off, guess and move on. Because if you get all of your other questions right, you're still going to pass the exam. So I always make sure that people know that. You do have a 4-hour time period to take the test. You'll take it at a PSI testing center. The address to schedule your exam, you're going to go to psiexams.com. And they'll give you your options there. And you can take it both here and you can even take it over in the Cincinnati area. So whichever is most convenient for you on what timelines. So just take a look at that, you know, you don't have to take it just here in Indianapolis. Like when I took mine, I drove over to Terre Haute just because it was going to be 2 weeks before I could schedule a test here in Indy. And I don't want to wait that long. So Also know that not everyone at the testing center is taking the same test as you. So, and they may be done much sooner because they're giving exams for all sorts of things, electricians and plumbers and cosmetologists and funeral directors and you name it, they're probably taking a test there for it. You can't take anything in with you, but they'll provide you with a calculator and then either a dry erase board and a marker or a piece of paper and a pencil. What I would recommend there is if there are a few things that you always struggle to remember, kind of cram that in your brain right before you go in there and then write it down. And there are a few things along the way that we'll talk about, some acronyms. So the acronym, keep this in mind for later, it's fresh corn. And we'll talk about that one, but keep that in mind. Also, how many square feet are in an acre? I'll be honest, to this day, I think I finally got it right. I think it's 43,560 square feet in an acre. But again, it was when I was like, I knew that there were 4s, 5s, 3s, and 6s in there, wasn't sure the order. And so it was like, just get in there, write it down, and then I have it. Let's see, they do offer a remote proctoring option. And I've not heard anyone yet have positive things to say about it. Just that, sometimes it takes them, over an hour, sometimes 45 minutes to an hour from your scheduled time to actually have a proctor available to administer the exam for you. And it's just weird in how they do it. So keep that in mind. And then the last 3 on here, be rested, eat a snack before going in, and don't rush, because again, you do have 4 full hours to do it. So yeah, next one. Here's an additional study resource. So I get this question a lot. How else should I be studying? And so, depends on which course you're taking now and what materials they've provided you. And again, everyone's different, whether it's RECP or I forget what the names of some of the other ones are, but they all have different materials and different things to study from. When I took my course, and I did mine all online, but one of the things they offered was CompuCram.com, and it's a website, and we'll look at a screenshot of it here in just a moment. Now, if you want to help you study for the state portion, it's $49. If you want state and national, it's $89. In my opinion, that money was well worth it for me when I went to take my exam. So on there, you're going to search under real estate broker and then Indiana. The nice thing is they're going to give you a pretest to determine what areas you're doing well in and what areas you need to focus on. And then from there, in each of those sections, they're going to give you flashcards and quizzes and other study materials. And they're going to allow you to take as many practice tests as you want. And it even has a little like barometer type thing or dial that shows you when you're ready to take the exam. And I think they even have some sort of guarantee that if you don't pass, then I think they either refund you or they pay for your next exam on there. And we'll look at that screen here in just a minute. And just a disclaimer, I don't have any affiliation with them. I don't get anything from them. I just know that it worked well for me. And I've had some other students who have struggled with some things. And once they got on CompuCram and used that to help them study, then they passed and did really well. So that's obviously up to you, but just an additional study resource, because that's one thing I'm often asked about. And here's just a screenshot of their website and what it looks like. So again, you would just log in. And if you notice on here, at least when I took the screenshot, they had a promo code on there. So it's another 15% off. So again, save you some money there as well. Yeah, and here it is up at the top. It says you pass or it's free. So again, it's going to help you in studying. Any questions so far? All right, what's my next one? So here's what happens if you don't pass. Well, you're going to retake it. And if you pass one part but not the other, you only have to take the part of the test that you didn't pass. I know that not everyone passes the first time. And also your test score doesn't dictate what kind of agent you'll be. So it's a test. And so, I tell people don't get hung up on it. Some of the really great agents out there took the test multiple times. It just means that, maybe they don't take tests well. So let's see, next slide. And then what happens after I pass the test? Andrew, this one's you.
Sorry. Yeah, so after you pass the test, you're going to go to the IPLA, the Indiana Professional Licensing Agency, prove that you passed the test, and then they will issue a license number. So you'll just need to go to, you can physically go to IPLA, $60. I believe it has to be a check or cash, exact cash, cash or check. $60 IPLA could take 4 to 6 weeks. I've always, encouraged to try to do it in person. You might get things done a little quicker. And I think if you do it online, it goes pretty quickly, just a few days.
Yeah, they ran into an issue where all of a sudden they got really behind. So they've been telling people 4 to 6 weeks. We're seeing it's been taking them about 2 weeks to get your license issued.
There you go. And then, so once you have that license number, then it is up to you to choose which brokerage will house your license. And that's where, you would decide if you would join Century 21 Sheets or any of the other brokerages in Central Indiana. Now this one is important to me to separate the two things, to separate brokerage from just being a licensed realtor, because finally joining MIBOR, this is just you being a licensed realtor in the state of Indiana. You must join MIBOR, and it's about $1,200, $1,600. Now it will be prorated till July. So if you join, in April, you're going to be looking at about a 3-month instead of a 12-month. So it's going to be significantly less. And then once you hit July, then you take one lap around the calendar, and then you'll be caught up with everybody. So every July you have to pay your MIBOR dues. But like I said, if you joined, like you're going to be joining soon, it'll be significantly less because it's going to be prorated. But like I said, that's going to be regardless. That has nothing to do with you joining a brokerage. That just means you will be a licensed realtor that will then belong to NAR, the National Association of Realtors, IAR, the Indiana Association of Realtors, and then finally MIBOR, the MIBOR Realtor Association, where if I'm really just going to oversimplify the whole thing, that's the membership that's going to mean the website. That's going to be the BLC, the website that you're going to be on every day as a realtor.
Yep, perfect. So here's what brokerage is best for you, and here's my advice. It depends. It's easy for me to sit here and say that Century 21 Sheets is the best brokerage for you, but I'd be lying if I said that it was the right brokerage for everybody. What did I do? Hold on. I don't know how to use my own computer. So the things, in my opinion, that are the most important for you and for a new agent, and this is the advice that I received, and it's been about a little over 3.5 years ago when I became an agent, was to look at where you are going to get the best training, coaching, and support. I talked to somebody who, and he has his own brokerage now. And even when I was talking to him, and he told me, he said, I think you would be great. And, and I would love to work with you. He said, but I'm not the best brokerage for you because I don't have all of those things. I'm a small brokerage. He said, the least important things for you to look at when you're joining a brokerage are commission splits, paid leads, but he said, also look at your managers. Are they competing against you? And, our managers, while we are all realtors and we do still help people buy and sell, that's not our job. Our job and what we get paid to do is to be there to support our agents, to coach them, to mentor them, to be there for them after hours, and not to be out chasing the next listing, working with buyers all of the time. So I think that's one of the big differentiators between us. But again, like I said, it may not be, the best. We may not be the best brokerage for you. I like to think we are a fantastic brokerage, but you definitely need to, have a conversation and see what works best for you. So that's just my 2 cents on brokerages. Again, here's that link. If you didn't get a chance to sign in, either use your phone to scan the QR code or go to that link and get signed in. Again, that will give you access to the playlist for not only this session, but previous sessions that we've done. And that should actually come to you automatically now. And the nice thing is this is being live streamed to YouTube right now. So as soon as this is done and recording, it'll be available as well. So I'll give you just about a minute on that, and then we will get right into questions. I'm very glad I have co-hosts tonight because my voice is almost done.
I got your back, buddy.
I know you do. I know you both do. So. All right. So any questions you have before we get into sample questions? Because what we've done is we've pulled sample questions from both the national and the state exam. We've got the answer. We've got the multiple choice answers there. Andrew's going to read through them and the answers, and then we'll let you come off mute, tell us what your thoughts are, and then we'll talk through them. And if there's something deeper we need to discuss on any of those, we absolutely will. I also sometimes go off on little tangents, but they're educational and kind of real world examples and why these things matter. So just know that that's part of who I am and what I do. No questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Is anybody on this call besides the three of us dressed?
I hope so.
Okay, so you asked everybody to turn their cameras on and nobody has, so I'm assuming maybe they don't have clothes on?
I like to see faces.
So do I.
Yay, there's one.
Hola,
Hola,
¿cómo está?
no más bien amor, habla en el inglés bien.
No lo hablo muy bien. Lo entiendo mucho, pero no lo hablo muy bien.
Es porque el hablar se requiere riesgo. Now we need to speak English because nobody's going to understand us. That's not fair. Okay?
Yeah, that's not fair. So
she said she doesn't speak it well, she understands it well.
Gotcha.
And I said, and that's because speaking it takes risk.
It looks like Rebecca's putting kids to bed. Completely understand that. Thank you for still being on.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias porque de verdad necesito pasar el test y estoy aquí porque estoy muy interesada y como yo hay muchas más latinas que estamos aquí interesadas en presentar. Hemos presentado el test pero no lo hemos pasado. Entonces estamos buscando la forma de pasarlo.
Okay. So she says that she is one of many Latinas that has a desire to be a realtor and that resources for people who speak Spanish, for women who speak Spanish, to get through this test are not easy to come by.
Okay.
And she's grateful.
Good. Well, and if we need
now,
to...
no more Marianne. From this point forward, you must speak English and I will help you.
Yeah. Like I said, I understand some, but I don't speak Spanish well. So, but
Don't worry. Speak English.
All right.
For me, that's good.
Good. Well, the nice thing is I've seen more and more bilingual agents in our offices recently. So, I've got, what do we have? 2 now in my office. Downtown has 1 or 2. So yeah. So more and more. All right. So let's go to the questions. I'm going to minimize that.
Ok, mi pregunta es,
You're not speaking English. You're not speaking English.
Okay. I need the practice, the test is for the la forma de practicar el test es entrando en esto, pagando los $49 más los 60 que ve ahí, que le explicó al principio. ¿Sí será eso?
I don't know what you said.
I speak Spanish and I don't understand you.
Okay.
So here's what we're going to do, Marianne. Marianne, en el chat, okay, yo voy a poner mi contacto, okay? No.
Yes,
yo voy a poner
yes,
mi contacto and after what we do tonight, you can call me and I will help you, okay?
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, let's get into our first sample question. So, Andrew, take it away.
Amira's seller Tom just received the news that his buyers are walking away from the sale. They weren't willing to proceed after they saw the inspection report. Neither Amira nor Tom has requested a copy of the report. What's the most likely reason for that? A, Amira doesn't trust this particular inspection company. B, if they see the report, they'll be required to disclose any adverse findings. C, they are unwilling to pay for the report as the buyer requires. Or D, Tom wants to pay for his own inspector so that he can question the inspector.
All right. What are your thoughts? Anyone? So the answer here, yeah, so Rebecca says C. It
I'm with
is
Rebecca.
Huh?
I'm with Rebecca.
Well, it's actually the answer is B. So if the sellers or the seller's agent sees the report, then they have to disclose any adverse findings. So it's in the seller's best interest to not see the report and to just let them out of the deal. Because again, you know, in Indiana, we require a seller's disclosure on any known defects on a property. So if they were to get that report that shows, you know, whether it's foundation, roof, you know, electrical, whatever it is, then they then have to disclose that, which in my opinion isn't the end of the world. I would rather, if I know it, just disclose it, and that way it's out there and I'm not hiding anything. But again, that would be why it's B, that if they see the report, they'll be required to disclose any adverse findings. All right, next one.
According to the Department of Justice, an agreement between competitors to establish or adhere uniform price discounts is a type of which antitrust violation? A, group boycotting. B, market allocation. C, price fixing. D, tie-in arrangement.
So you can just come off mute and give us your thought. Anyone?
A, group boycotting.
Okay, A, group boycotting. That is not the correct answer. We do have a question on group boycotts coming up. I know that. So the answer to this one is actually price fixing. So they're agreeing to kind of fix the price and say, hey, this is what we're all going to do. You know, so that would be if, and we'll even say like Coke and Pepsi. If Coke and Pepsi both just said, hey, we're going to make, you know, Coke all, or, you know, cases of soda all $30 a case. Not because that's what the market says, but just because that's what they want to do. And they say, well, if we all say it's $30 a case, then that's what people have to pay. So it's actually C, price fixing. All right, next.
Where would collusion occur then?
That happens in Russia. And then there's no collusion.
No collusion.
I think, well, they're all in so both group boycotting and price fixing are types of collusion, because it's people kind of colluding together on things. They just give them specific names.
Right. Okay. Just collusion is probably just fancier sounding. That's why I heard it so often.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Next question.
Which of these is not an example of a group boycott? A, Acme Realty offers discounted services. Behringer Realty and Hawthorne Real Estate Group decide not to show any of Acme's listing and to prohibit showings to Acme buyers so they can drive Acme out of business. B, Deb, a licensee, is unhappy with the marketing materials a local company produced. She shares her concerns with Irving, a colleague, and they agree to avoid doing business with this company and to share the news with other colleagues. C, Sean and the associated brokers in his firm agree to purchase their marketing materials from a single supplier so they get a quantity discount. And D, several brokerages in a certain area agree to stop running advertisements in a local publication.
So which one of these is not an example of a group boycott?
Oh, not. Okay.
C.
See, yeah. C's is smart shopping, isn't it?
Very good. That's a great question or a great answer there. And it's Q, right?
Correct.
Perfect. Nice job. You got the correct answer. Next one.
Yasmin listed a house at 6% commission rate, and it just sold for $463,500. Her brokerage and the buyer's agent's brokerage split the commission equally between them. Then Yasmin, who has a 60-40 commission split with her broker, Yasmin gets the higher split, took her check to the bank. How much did Yasmin earn from this transaction?
So this is what I always say. I mean, obviously the answers are there, but how are you going to calculate this answer? And so this is where I like to talk through, before we go and get the actual answer, talk through how are you going to figure this out? So who wants to kind of help talk through how to calculate this? Hey, Steven, it looks like you came off mute. Do you have some feedback or thoughts on how to do this?
Yeah. So first, find the 6% commission rate of the cost of the house,
Okay.
and then split that 50-50
Okay.
between the two brokerage firms. And then to get Yasmin 60%, multiply that number by 0.6. And that should be your answer.
All right. So let's take a look here. So so here's the calculation. So we took $463,500 times 0.06, and that gives you your total commission on the sale. So $27,810. So now it's 50-50. So you're going to divide that by 2. So you're going to take that 27,810, divide it by 2, and you get $13,905. And that's what her brokerage got. And then it's 60% goes to her and 40% goes to the brokerage. So 60% of that 13,905 is $8,343, and that's how much her check would be. So the answer was A. No, sorry, C. Yeah, C. Sorry. So the answer is C. So very good. Nice job, Stephen.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions on that calculation?
No.
All right, let's move on. Andrew.
Justin decided to build a privacy fence around his yard. He thought the fence was along the property line, but it turns out he built it 1 foot inside his neighbor's property. What will an inspector document as an existing on the neighboring property? Sorry, yeah. A, easement. B, eminent domain. C, encroachment. D, necessity.
Latoya says C, encroachment. Anyone else have any thoughts?
I would agree.
That is correct. It is an encroachment.
Hey, all right.
Yep.
Good
So
one, Latoya.
yeah, and encroachments do happen, and there are times where I mean, the main thing is as long as things get documented appropriately. So for example, I just had some buyers that closed on a property, and we didn't know this when we wrote the offer on the property, but that the way it was, so there's the lot where their property sits on, and then the lot right next to theirs, there's another house. Well, at some point in the past, there was a shared driveway between the two properties, and they had a shared driveway easement recorded for that. But since then, the owner of the property next to them kind of changed it up and is using that driveway solely for his own use. So even though it was on my buyer's property, it was an encroachment on their property because he was using that. So we had to fill out some more papers, and it was a consent to encroach agreement, which allowed them legally to do that. And it was recorded as an easement in all the legal documents and everything. So that's just kind of a real world example on where those come into play sometimes. All right.
Christopher, can I ask you a real quick question before we go forward? When you gave that math scenario, and after commission, you cut it in half. And in that moment is when, the buyer and the seller's agents
Yep.
Where is it ever written in black and white that it has to be split in half, or what's the rules on that gesture?
No, so it really just depends. And typically, so if you're the listing agent, when you write your listing contract, so the listing contract is an agreement between the brokerage and the seller. And in that is where they determine what the commission amounts are going to be. So the way our commission agreement or our listing contract states, it says, the total commission will be, we'll just say 6%. But then there's another line, a few lines down, that says, that the selling brokerage is going to, cooperate with, the buyer's agent and pay X amount of either dollars or percent. So they could take that and say, hey, we're going to charge 6% to sell your property. But then they could say, hey, I'm only going to pay the buyer or the agent that brings the buyer. I'm only going to pay them 1%.
Right.
And so then that's where that gets negotiated at. And the way you as the buyer's agent would know is in the BLC. So when you're looking in the computer at that listing, there's a section at the bottom and it says BAC, which is your buyer's agent's commission. And that's where they'll put in there how much you're going to get as the buyer's agent.
Yep.
So it's not always 50-50. It really depends on how that listing contract is written out.
I never made that connection to BAC. That's yeah, totally.
That's what it is. And you will see it's very often you'll see, a difference in it sometimes. And, I've done it before where, we as a brokerage, if it's under, 550,000, we typically pay out 3% buyer's agent's commission. But say I wanted to give a discount. So like when I sold my dad's condo, and I typically charge 7% is, kind of where my commission typically is. And again, we don't set commission rates as a company or as a board or anything like that. But, I said, hey, I'm going to give you a discount. I only charged them 5.5%. I still paid out 3%. I only took 2.5%. And so that's why you'll see a difference in those things sometimes.
Sure.
So, yep.
All right. Which of the following would be a violation of license law? A, offering a free home warranty to home buyers and disclosing that to all parties to the transaction. B, acting as broker and disclosed principal in a transaction. C, acting as agent for both buyer and seller in the same transaction with the expressed oral consent of both. D, offering part of the listing commission to cooperating brokers. Which of the following would be a violation of license law?
Yeah, Todd knows the answer to this one too. Latoya says B.
So B is incorrect because you can buy real estate or you can sell real estate if you hold a real estate license. That's what it means. Disclosed principal it means you're either the buyer or the seller.
I think it's C.
It's C.
I agree with you, Stephen. So one of the big words to always look for in the test is the word oral. Oral agreements are almost never acceptable. So when it says oral, that's typically a red flag. That's a no-no. So if it's an agreement, it needs to be in writing.
Yep. So yes, the answer is C, acting as agent for both buyer and seller in the same transaction with the expressed oral consent of both. Now, had this question said acting as agent for both buyer and seller in the same transaction, that's not necessarily a violation of license law because they didn't give you the information that was oral consent. So if you have, if you're acting, you can absolutely act as an agent for both buyer and seller. Caveat is it has to be with expressed written consent of both. Andrew.
Which of the following would be a violation of license law? Again. A, to give an opinion of value that a seller relies upon. B, to complete a sales contract for a purchaser. C, to act as a limited agent in a real estate transaction. D, to assure a buyer that a property will go up in value.
D.
Yep. Very good. It is D.
D is in dog.
Yeah. Because you're not Miss, I always tell people you're not Miss Cleo, but then I kind of age myself and, a lot of people are like, who's Miss Cleo? I'm like, she's a psychic. But yeah, so the answer is D.
She's an
Now,
old
would that
psychic.
be somehow making it factual, like saying that what you're saying is fact? Because I mean, you're not allowed to kind of give predictions in the market.
Right. So you can tell people what's happened in the market. You can say, hey, here's what this property has done over the last, year, 10 years, 5 years, whatever it is. But you never know, because something could happen tomorrow that causes the market to shift drastically.
Right.
It could be that, it could be, stock market issue, or, it could be that, there was a major explosion or something right by that house. Now that property, the value of it has gone down immensely because of some outside factor. So you just don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah. Should a licensee wish to purchase a property from a private owner, the licensee is required to disclose the licensee's true estimate of market value, must try to market the property prior to making any offer, required to disclose that they are a licensed agent, or must tell the seller if the property appears to be underpriced.
C.
That is correct. The only thing is you just have to disclose that you are a licensed agent.
Man, someone's on a roll.
Oh, yeah.
Required to disclose they are a licensed.
Yeah.
Indiana
So
Haber.
No,
You're fine.
yeah, I was just like, Q, just out of curiosity, Q, where are you at as far as studying and taking the class?
I'm scheduled to take it on this Saturday.
Oh, awesome.
All
Well,
right.
so far,
You got
you're doing
momentum,
well.
Q.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Here we go.
Indiana
I
advertising
want
regulations.
to go back to
would be-
that question for a minute, guys.
Uh-oh, here we go. Run it back. Take a closer look with Todd Callan.
If you are on the inside of an industry, which is what you will be if you sell real estate, you're an insider now. I kind of sort of believe that you shouldn't have to pay retail anymore. Now you got to be fair, okay? You got to be honest, but you should be able to discern what a bargain is and take advantage of a bargain. The only thing you have to do is tell everybody in writing on a purchase agreement that you are a licensed realtor. Okay, I'm done.
Okay.
Indiana advertising regulations would be violated if a licensee, A, places an advertisement for a listed property under her managing broker's name, but fails to include her own. B, places an ad for real property services that includes only her name, license number, and phone number. C, places an advertisement for real property services that fails to disclose the fees associated with those services. Or D, does not place a for sale sign on a listed property.
B.
Yep, that is correct. So what else has to be in any advertising for that?
Has to be the broker's
Very
information.
good. Yep, absolutely. All right, next one.
When real estate licensee Brian discovered that real estate licensee Arnold was using a choose your neighbor letter to market a property without also listing the property in the MLS, the local paper, or even putting a for sale sign in the yard, what charge could he bring against Arnold to the National Association of Realtors? A charge of agreeing to discriminate by limiting access to the property, a charge of misrepresenting the property for sale, a charge of not fulfilling his fiduciary duties to his client by not conducting a complete marketing plan, a charge of unfair practice because his mother did not get one of those choose your neighbor letters.
What do you think here? Any thoughts on this one?
I'm
Can read.
going to wait for Q and then I'll say something.
All right, so Latoya says the third one. Q said, you said the second one?
No, I was still reading.
Oh, okay.
Let me just quick Google what fiduciary means, and I should be able to keep up with everybody.
Those would be the duties that, and now you're going to put me on the spot what all of them are, but you have the duty of honesty, loyalty, confidentiality, and a couple other things. I should know them off the top of my head to your client.
Yeah, involving trust, especially with regard to the relationship between a trustee and a beneficiary.
Yes.
So a charge of not fulfilling his.
So, Q, did you have you come up with an answer yet?
I think it's the first one, a charge of agreeing to
Yes.
access to the property.
And there's the answer right there. Answer, you are correct. Realtor Brian could charge Arnold with violating Article 10 of the Code of Ethics, which prohibits realtors from agreeing to discriminate against people belonging to a protected class. And those things come up a lot. When we talk about like off-market sales, who are you marketing properties to? And so as realtors, we just have to be careful of those things. Another question that came up this week was, an agent reached out and said, hey, my clients want to know some demographic information for some particular neighborhoods. And that was a red flag for me. It was like, well, what kind of information do they want? Because we can't give them information on things like racial, ethnic, religious, etc., makeups of demographics of areas. We can give things like, I think there's information we have available like median income and things like that. But when it comes to those kind of protected classes, we can't share that information because it could also be a fair housing violation. All right, next one.
When property with a pre-existing lease is sold, the new owner doesn't have to honor the lease unless it's recorded, isn't obligated by the terms of that lease, must give the tenants at least 30 days to vacate, must honor the lease terms unless the lease states otherwise.
Must honor the lease unless terms other states, unless this lease states otherwise.
I agree.
I agree.
You'd be amazed how few tenants know that. We hear stories all the time about, I got to move, somebody bought the house that I rent. And oftentimes that buyer will act as though that tenant doesn't have any rights because their agreement was with the old owner. And the reality is they absolutely have rights as long as they have a lease.
Yep. All right.
And I've never seen a lease in my life that said, here's my agreement with you unless somebody else buys the house. Never once.
Right?
Yep.
Sam and Bridget are cousins who jointly own property. They are both named on the deed. They receive title at the same time. They have the right of survivorship, and they each have equal interest and undivided rights of possession. What type of ownership do they have? Tenancy in common, estate in severalba, joint tenancy, tenancy by the entirety. I don't know if I've ever seen that word in my life. Severalty?
Severalty, yeah.
There you go.
Oh, okay. My brain just hit a pretzel. Severalty, estate and severalty.
Victoria is correct.
B can't be right because it just made up a word, so B's out.
It's not a made up word. It comes up in another question soon.
Whatever. But yeah, I'm with Latoria.
Joint
Yeah,
tenant.
Latoria.
Thank you.
All right, Todd, do you want to talk through the answers on this one?
Sure. Anytime we talk about joint tenancy, we use the acronym JTWROS, joint tenancy with rights of survivorship. Why is this joint tenancy? Because they bought it together. Okay, they're both named on the deed. They received the title at the same time. They have the right of survivorship, and they have equal ownership. So they are joint tenants with rights of survivorship. Tenancy in common, you can buy it together and you can have half and half ownership, but you can determine that your ownership not pass to the other person who bought the property should you pass away. So that's tenancy in common. Estate inseverability, Andrew may not believe it, but that's a real word, is where you buy real estate with certain rights to the real estate severed from the rights that you bought. You'll see this fairly frequently in places like Texas, where you'll see cows grazing between oil derricks. So you own the ground, but somebody else owns the mineral rights under the ground. Or in New York City, air rights. So Grand Central Station is a publicly owned building, but the Grand Hyatt Hotel, which is built in the air above Grand Central Station, the air rights over Grand Central were bought by Hyatt Hotels. So that's severed ownership, partial ownership. And then tenancy by the entirety. It's an added title protection. It in essence means spouses. We use this for same-sex marriage. Tenancy by the entirety is for same-sex marriage ownership. If it's differing sex, we go husband and wife. It's the same rights. The cool thing about tenancy by the entirety or holding ownership as husband and wife, I own my home together with my wife. If I get in an automobile accident and the ambulance chaser attorney pierces my automobile insurance policy and goes after other assets held in my name, they cannot go after my home because my home is owned under husband and wife. It's probably more information than you wanted, but I like title. Title's cool.
That was the one I struggled with the absolute most when I was studying for my exam. And I think it was one I just guessed and moved on because my brain wasn't processing it properly. But now I know how to figure it out.
Marcus listed his property with Home Sweet Home Realty and one of its listing agents, Ron Savage. About a month later, Ron filed for bankruptcy. Which of the following statements about this situation is true? Bankruptcy has no impact on agency agreements. Marcus can choose whether or not to continue the listing agreement with Ron. The agency agreement is terminated because the agent filed for bankruptcy. The agency agreement only terminates if the broker or the principal declares bankruptcy.
What do you think here?
I think I'm going to look down at my phone and tell Latori or Q speed up.
So I was on this one. I always ask the question, who is the listing contract between? Is it between Marcus and Ron, or is it between Marcus and Home Sweet Home Realty?
Home sweet home.
Correct.
Right.
So just because Ron files bankruptcy, it has no effect on that agreement because the agreement is not with Ron, it is with the brokerage. And so that's the one that, in just as a general rule to think about. So, listing contracts are between the seller and the brokerage. A purchase agreement is a contract between the buyer and the seller. So the answer here is the last one. The agency agreement only terminates if the broker, and in this one they mean the brokerage, the owner of the brokerage, or the principal, which would be Marcus, declares bankruptcy. So at that point, if he declares bankruptcy, there's different things involved there. So the answer is the fourth one.
What type of loan is neither guaranteed nor insured by government agencies? Conventional, Federal Housing Administration or FHA, U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, or U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, the VA.
Conventional.
Yep.
That is correct.
Yeah, I mean, it's the one that just doesn't sound like it's part of the government.
Yeah. Any input here, Todd?
Sure. I talk about the mortgage granddaddies. So the B, C, and D, the granddaddy, is a department of the federal government. Conventional loans have two granddaddies. One is called Fannie Mae and one is called Freddie Mac. And they are not departments of the federal government. They are what is called government-sponsored entities. But they're not departments of the federal government.
There we go. Oh, here's a blank slide. Oh, there we go.
A buyer is purchasing a property for $500,000. He has a down payment of $50,000 and is financing the rest. What's the amount of the loan origination fee if the lender charges a 1.5 points?
No, hold on. So this one we got to talk through because it'll go through the answers when I flip through the slides. So how are you going to figure this out?
Find out how much he's financing.
Okay.
450,000.
Okay, and then what?
Multiply that by 1.5%.
Correct. So yeah, so points are always based on the amount financed. So they've given you what his total amount was going to be, but he had a down payment of $50,000, so he's only financing $450,000. And 1 point is 1% of the amount financed. So in this case, it would be 1.5% of the $450,000. So again, we know that total amount's 500, total amount financed is 450, 1.5 points equals 1.5% of the financed amount. And it comes out to $6,750. Any questions on this one? All right.
A duplex produces a monthly gross rental income of $1,800. The GRM an appraiser extracts from the local market is $125. Calculate the property's estimated value.
So how would we figure this one out? Latoya says C, and that is the correct answer. The key here is that GRM is, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say I took the 1,800 times the 125 to get the 225,000.
Absolutely. And yes, and the key here is that they're talking about your monthly gross rental income is this, and your gross rent multiplier is, that other number. Where they might throw you off on questions, and sometimes you'll see on the exam, it'll be this basically the same question that they'll throw in there that, Duplex produces a monthly gross rental income of $1,800. And, they have monthly expenses of $800. And then they go on and give you the gross rent multiplier and do that. And they threw that in there to throw you off, because if you take the expenses out of it, then you're using a net number, not a gross number. So just remember that you're going to multiply your gross rent by your gross rent multiplier, and that's how you're going to come up with the value of the property. So do we see this a lot? Not really. It's mostly used in situations where it's a rental property. Think college campuses very frequently that, again, a property could be much more valuable because of the rent that it produces than if you just had a family that was living there.
Allison and Brent are financing their house purchase of $232,500 with an FHA loan. Their credit score qualifies them for the minimum down payment. What do they need to put down?
So who can tell me what the minimum down payment percentage is on an FHA loan?
Is it 3.5?
It is.
It is 3.5.
Yes. What is, and let's go through this one and then we'll talk through a couple others. So knowing that it's 3.5%, now what would you do?
Oh, multiply the purchase price.
Correct. You'd multiply your purchase price by 3.5%. So your answer would be $8,137.50. So let me ask you this, and these are some things you'll need to know on your exam. What is the minimum down payment for a first-time home buyer on a conventional loan?
Conventional, isn't it? You still have to put 20%.
No. Well, conventional, yes, but in insured conventional, and typically we just talk insured conventional and conventional together, but it's actually 3%. So your minimum down payment for a first-time home buyer on a conventional loan is 3%.
I want to caution you on that question though, guys. I've seen a lot of sample test questions, okay? And I don't know that I've ever seen 3% indicated as a first-time home buyer, insured conventional, minimum down payment. I think that the test is behind the times, and I think that the test thinks it needs to be 5%. Correct me if I'm wrong, Christopher. Have you seen 3% anywhere as a correct answer on a national real estate exam or a state exam?
I never see them ask about conventional. So I see them ask more about FHA, VA, and USDA.
Okay. So the truth is it's 3%. 3% is a relatively recent manifestation of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac for first-time home buyers. And what do we mean when we say insured conventional? Does anybody have an idea what that means?
Isn't it that Freddie or Fannie will still buy the loan?
So that means it's conventional. Freddie or Fannie will buy the loan. What does insured conventional mean? It means it has private mortgage insurance, PMI. So any conventional loan with less than a 20% down payment is an insured conventional loan. It's going to have PMI. You all familiar with the term PMI? Private mortgage insurance?
That makes sense, yeah.
Okay.
So let me ask you this. What's the minimum down payment for a VA loan?
0.
Correct. 0%. How about for a USDA loan?
I think that's 0 too.
Correct. It's also 0. And those are some really cool loan products. So once you kind of get through your testing, you get out into the what I call the real world. Spend some time talking to your local mortgage lender and getting to know when those programs would be appropriate. And a great lender is also going to bring those up and say, hey, for this buyer, they are a qualified veteran, et cetera, and this is the best loan program for them. Or this house is in an area that qualifies for USDA financing. And based on, these other factors, that's what's going to be the best product for them. But the real key is once you get your test and you get out there is to get with people that you trust, people that you can go and talk to, and you're just going to be a great asset for your clients. So obviously, like I said, Todd works in my office, and he's done quite a few loans for my clients, and we've done VA. We haven't done USDA, but we've done FHA, we've done conventional, and like I said, a good lender is going to take that time and work through that with your clients for you. All right, here you go, Andrew. Here's your favorite word again.
Severalty. Regina purchases a farm with 80 acres and owns her own property in severalty. What does this mean for the company that purchased the mineral rights from the previous owner? A, Regina and the company that purchased the mineral rights are automatically tenants in common since they share ownership of the property. B, Regina didn't purchase the mineral rights, which have been severed from the property by the previous owner. C, Regina included the mineral rights in her purchase agreement since she could not otherwise own the property in severalty. D, Regina is the sole owner and the company must accept fractional portion of the sales price in return for forfeiting the mineral rights.
You learn new vocab words today.
I really did. This is wild. Severalty, it's a thing. Deal with it,
It is.
everybody.
All right. So what do you think?
B,
Did you say D or B?
B as in boy.
Yes, correct. It is B as in boy. Regina didn't purchase the mineral rights, which have been severed from the property by the previous owner. So yeah, they're gonna live together. So, and again, it could be, I don't know what kind of minerals, but if it's, my guess is oil. So they're still gonna have access to that oil, and she can still graze cows on it or whatever she's done with that land. All right. Next.
Real estate licensee William is preparing a sale agreement that will include an unusual circumstance. What's his best course of action? A, to consult an attorney. B, to create his own forms. C, use an existing form and write an addendum that covers the unusual circumstance. D, use existing forms but modify the language to address the unusual circumstance. I'd say A or C, right?
A.
Correct. It is A. If it's something unusual, consult an attorney. Now, the attorney may advise to use an existing form and write an addendum that covers it, or that. But again, you want to, you're not an attorney, so you want to consult an attorney first. And depending on what it is, it may be something that your client needs to consult an attorney on, but it could also be that we've got access to an attorney through our title company, Dominion Title. And sometimes if there's something unusual, it's a quick question to our attorney, and just say, hey, how do I do this, or what do I need to do here? And that way you're getting the proper legal advice. But just know that you are not an attorney, and so your first step would be to consult one.
In which of these situations would a listing be most likely to terminate due to the listing agreement expiration? A market with high inventory and low demand, a market with low inventory and high demand, a moderately priced home in a neighborhood slated for renewal, a moderately priced home sold as is in a market full of investors.
Not taking a chance on that one. Not sure.
I think it's A.
Correct. Yeah. So if you've got a market with a lot of homes to sell and no demand for it, there's a good chance that listing agreement's going to expire. We don't see that very often in this market. It's
right.
Unless you've got like a 2-day listing contract, it's probably not going to expire. Or you're way out to lunch on what you're expecting for that property. That's the other thing we see sometimes. So, all right, next one.
Regarding subagency in the state of Indiana, a brokerage firm, A, must disclose this through the MLC/BLC, may offer it only if the buyer and seller agree in writing, may offer it only if the fees charged to all parties are equal. D, may not offer it under any circumstances.
B.
I'm sorry, was that B as in boy or D as in dog?
B as in boy.
It is actually D as in dog. Subagency is not allowed in Indiana.
What is subagency again?
What is subagency? It is where, say, for example,
Correct.
Huh?
Where you're the listing agent and you can act as the.
No. That's dual agency.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's either dual or limited agency is how you'll see that.
I'm sorry.
So, yeah, no, don't apologize. Subagency is where, say, I work for Century 21 Sheets, and I'm trying to think how this works even. And we'll say FC Tucker had a listing, but I then worked on, even though I worked for another brokerage, I worked on behalf of Tucker on a particular sale. That would be subagency. I always kind of think of like subleasing. So like I subleased their listing out, whatever. That's kind of how I think about it, but it's not legal in Indiana, so we don't have to worry about that one. But yeah, you were thinking of what they call either dual agency or limited agency.
Which of the following needs to be licensed to sell real estate? County assessor, the executrix of an estate paid a fee to sell a descendant's home, a neighbor helping sell a property in exchange for use of a timeshare in Florida, or an auctioneer.
Latoria says C. What else? Someone else said something.
I said C.
That is correct. It is C, a neighbor helping sell a property in exchange for use of a timeshare in Florida. So even though they weren't getting money, they were receiving something of value for helping sell that property. So they would need to be licensed for that. Very good.
A broker associate may do which of the following? Maintain their own escrow trust account, advertise in their own name without the name of a firm, maintain a separate office and signage at their home, only operate under the oversight of their managing broker.
D as in dog.
That is correct. Yep, you can only, out of those choices, you can only operate under the oversight of your managing broker. Very good. All right.
A licensee can lose his or her license for which of the following? Allowing funds to be deposited into an interest-bearing escrow account, paying a commission to an unlicensed person, acting as a disclosed limited agent in a real estate transaction, charging a commission rate higher than the real estate commission allows.
B as in boy.
Yes. Yes, the answer is B as in boy. You can't pay a commission to an unlicensed person. And one of the ways that comes in is so you can't, you can't advertise and say, hey, if you send someone that to me that buys a home from me or sells their home through me, I will pay you a $500 referral fee. Unless they're a licensed agent, you cannot do that. So that is it. Now, I think Latoria had said D, charging a commission rate higher than the real estate commission allows. And with all of the antitrust acts and things like that, the real estate commission sets no guidance on commission whatsoever. So, I can go and say, hey, I'm going to charge 10% commission, and nobody can say that I can't. So it is B, paying a commission to an unlicensed person.
If a property is deemed to be psychologically affected, the listing agent must disclose this fact and the nature of the affectation to all parties, must disclose this fact to prospective buyers, may not intentionally misrepresent a fact in response to a direct question, has no obligation one way or the other because psychological affectations are not considered to be physical defects.
C as in Christopher.
That is correct. So who can tell me three things that would deem a property to be psychologically affected? Who can tell me one?
Seller is cray.
No. There are a lot of cray people out there, but nope.
Meth.
Like a stigma, would that be considered a stigmatized? Am I thinking along this? Okay.
Yeah, you're thinking along the same lines. Meth is not necessarily psychologically affected. However, that is handled separately on the seller's disclosure. If meth was manufactured on a property, the seller does have to disclose that. So that isn't a psychological affectation. It's more of a physical one. So they do have to disclose that. But yeah, so stigmatized property, but what would be things that stigmatize a property? And they give three examples in Indiana law.
Murder in the
Like
house.
a killing, like someone was murdered.
Yep, murder or just death on the property. So like even like where I live, my next door neighbor, he died in the house. And so if I was selling his house and somebody asked me, hey, did anyone die in the house? I would have to tell them yes. And by the way, the answer is yes. C, you may not intentionally misrepresent a fact in response to a direct question. So death or murder is one. What else?
Is it AIDS or HIV?
Correct. Somebody living in the house with HIV. And then there's one more.
Believed to be haunted.
No. Ghosts and haunting are not psychological affectations. Are ghosts real? I mean,
yes.
Ghostbusters. The last one would be just the scene of some other like well-known or documented crime. So it could be, that maybe didn't involve death. It could be you know, it could be maybe there was a major hostage situation there or some other crime that happened, but maybe didn't involve death, but still kind of makes it just, again, stigmatized and has a psychological effect to it. So
I can't think of like I can't remember like the guy that had a freezer in his basement and he kept bodies down there. I can't remember what that was. That would be like, I can't think of, I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, weird and creepy. But so
Yeah,
here's
creepy.
yeah, but here's the deal. So if a site, so that would be a psychologically affected property. Now, so if we read through those, you are not required to disclose it to everybody. You're not required to disclose to other agents, to other buyers, unless they ask you a direct question. Now, if they say, is this the house where the guy had a basement full of freezers with bodies in them, and you know that to be true, you have to tell them yes. You can't lie about it. Now, you're not going to put that in your property description, right? It's not going to be the leading line on, hey, come check out this, you know, murder house.
Of course.
You're not going to put that out there. But if somebody asks you, you have to tell them the truth. So that's my 2 cents on psychologically affected properties. And we have about 15 minutes left. So we'll keep going though.
When acting as a limited agent, a licensee has certain limitations as to how they should conduct themselves. Which of the following would be a violation of those limitations? A, giving the buyers information about other homes that have sold in the area. B, refusing to tell the buyer why the seller is selling. C, failing to tell the seller that the buyer would probably pay more than they had offered. D, telling the buyer that, in your opinion, this property is a little overpriced. The seller would probably take less.
Thoughts? So which one is
Limited
violation of license law or violation? Yeah. So he says C. So it actually would not be a violation to fail to tell the seller that the buyer would probably pay more than they've offered. So what you have to remember in a limited agent transaction, you become, I forget the word I was trying to think of, but your focus is on the actual transaction. You can't give favor to one side or the other. You're just managing more of that transaction, and they have to figure those things out on their own.
Okay, understood.
Yeah, so it would be a violation if D, you told the buyer that in your opinion, the property is overpriced and the seller would probably take less. Now, what you can do in that situation when it is your opinion that the property is overpriced, A, you can't tell them what the seller would take or not. You can't, because you know that information, you can't share it. But you can absolutely, A, which is give the buyers information about other homes that have sold in the area and let them make that determination. But you can't say, hey, I know that they said, you know, that if they sold it for $250, they're good. You can't tell them that because you know that confidential information from the other side.
Who are you technically representing in a limited agent transaction?
The house.
Is it the seller?
Neither.
Neither. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically at that point, you're just doing the paperwork and doing what each side tells you to do.
Okay.
So certainly in the right situations, I mean, that can be really great for you as an agent. Because again, you're depending on how you've worked out your listing contract and things like that, you can have both sides of that commission. You just have to make sure that you are doing things ethically and again, following all the rules. So if you do find yourself in that limited agent transaction, please get with your sales manager just to make sure that you're doing the right things in that transaction and not favoring one side or the other, or worse yet, favoring yourself, because that could get you into some ethical issues.
Okay.
In the state of Indiana, net listings are not legal. Require the written consent of all parties. Must state the maximum fee. Must not allow the broker to net more than the seller.
Is it C?
I think that's A.
A? Okay.
Yeah, the answer is A. They're not legal. All right.
A seller received $800,000 for a 5.5 acre rectangular parcel alongside a road frontage. The property is 400 feet deep. What was the price per front foot of the property? $2,000, $363.64, $598.95, $1,335.67. So
All right. A, B, C, or D. All right, let's talk through this one. How would you figure this one out? I have a little diagram, but if anyone wants to take a stab at it first.
You got to find out how many square feet are in 5.5 acres.
Okay, and then what?
Then that answer, it's 400 feet deep, so you got to find what the per front foot is.
Okay, and how do you do that?
Multiply the two together, and you take the 5.5 acres divided by 400, right?
So how many square feet are in an acre?
43,560.
Stephen knows.
Yes.
Christopher doesn't half the time, but Stephen knows.
I know about what it is.
Does that work on the exam?
No. And here's one thing. All right, so here's what we know. So we know that it's they paid $800,000. So here's your rectangle. We know it was a rectangle, and we know that it's 5.5 acres. Is this square? Is how many? Is whatever it is. So you've got to multiply your 5.5 acres by your 43,560 square feet per acre, which gives you some large number, and you've got 400 feet in your depth. So you're going to take that it's like 292,000 or whatever it is. I don't have it in front of me. However many square feet that is, divide that by your 400, and that's going to give you 598.95. But that is how many front feet there are, right? So that very bottom number, it says how many front feet, that's going to be 598.95. If you go back and look at the answers, it's $598.95 is one of the answers, but that is not correct. That is how many feet there are in the front, but not how much they paid per front foot. So from there, you need to take that 800,000 and divide it by the 598.95. And that gives you $1,357.67. So again, that's another thing you have to look out for, because you start doing some math and just dividing some numbers and you're like, well, this looks good. But they didn't give you, or they gave you numbers that match part of it, but not the final answer. So that's where it gets a little tricky. All right, next.
If individuals want to use their property in a way that's not permitted by a zoning ordinance, they must submit a request for a variance or special use permit to which one of the following groups: the Architectural Review Board, the Severalty Board, the Building Department, the Planning Board, or the Zoning Board of Appeals.
There is no Severalty Board. I thought
so we can rule that out.
And what about the Fiduciary Board?
I didn't want to try to pronounce that word, so I just went ahead and took the high road on that one.
The Executrix Board. We like the way you pronounce that word too.
Let's not even talk about that one.
Oh, and this is every day at work with us.
That's pretty awesome.
So what's the answer here?
D, the zoning board.
Correct. It's D, the Zoning Board of Appeals. Here's a good one.
Ashish is purchasing a bank-owned property. His real estate agent tells him the bank is not offering insurable, not marketable title. What does this mean to Ashish? An insurable title has uncurable title defects, so Ashish terminate his contract. Insurable title carries a higher standard of assurance than marketable title, so Ashish shouldn't be concerned. Insurable title is one that may have known defects, but is still insurable. A sheesh should carefully review the title policy.
See,
Correct. C. Yeah, so there may be some known defects, but the title insurance company says, hey, we know it's here. We're going to insure over it. If something comes up down the road, we're going to take care of it. And the main thing is that she should just carefully review that policy and make sure that's stated in there. All right, I'm going to skip through to one that we need to make sure that we cover. This one.
Corinne is 68 years old and employed full-time. She's of Spanish descent, is raising her 12-year-old grandson, and lives with her partner, Catherine. She requires an accessible apartment because she uses a wheelchair. Under which of the following federally protected classes might Corinne be protected if she faces housing discrimination?
And is it, you got to read through all the answers. Is it age, employment status, national origin, familial status, and sexual identity? Or age, race, familial status, sexual identity, and disability? National origin, sex, disability, and familial status? Or religion, familial status, and disability?
I'm going to say aqua.
You're going to say which one?
Yeah.
All right.
That's what I feel as well.
Was which one?
I feel the same. Age, race, familial status, sexual identity, and disability.
Okay. So a couple of things here. So let's start with which law are we talking about here?
We're talking about her national origin.
Well, which law? I mean, one of the main big laws are we looking at? Is this the Americans with Disabilities Act? Is this the Fair Housing Act?
Disability.
Okay, so disability is one, but I think there are other things that are listed here, and that would be fair housing. So we've got to look at what are the protected, the 7 protected classes when it comes to fair housing. Is age one of them?
no.
No, age is not. So we can automatically rule out the first 2.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Let me ask you this: is sexual identity listed in one of the protected classes under the federal fair housing law?
No, it's going to be it's going to be the third one.
Correct. It is the third one: national origin, sex, disability, and familial status. Because the other thing is, now it lists here religion, but from the question, we don't know what Corinne's religion is.
Gotcha.
So here's an acronym that Todd's put it in there as well, that I like to use, and that helps me remember what those protected classes are. So F is for familial status. The first R, the first R is religion. S is for sex. H is for handicap. C is for color. R is for, I think, race, because I think you used religion earlier. So it's race and religion are the 2 R's. And then N is for national origin. So the acronym Fresh Corn. So that, again, is just one way that helps me remember what the federally protected classes are under the federal fair housing law. So it is the third one. So yeah, so the answer is federal fair housing laws don't name age, employment status, or sexual identity as protected classes. Corinne would be protected if she experienced housing discrimination based on her national origin, sex, disability, or familial status. All right, so that puts us at 7:27, which kind of is the end of what we have time for today. But if you didn't get questions answered, please reach out to either myself. If it's about estate in severalty, please reach out to Andrew Huber. That's his new specialty.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions on executrix, he can handle that as well. But there's my contact information. If you didn't sign in already, please do. Again, you'll get a link to the playlist that has this recording in previous sessions that we've done. And if you go back, we do add different questions in, or we've, flipped some of those around. So some of those we didn't get to at the end. To be honest, those were probably 2 sessions back. Those were my first questions. So you can go back and always look at those as well. But does anybody have any last minute questions, comments? Was this helpful to you?
I think it was great. How often do you actually do these?
It's pretty much every 2 weeks.
Okay.
If you go on to and I should know this off the top of my head, if you go to our website, which is c21sheets.com, and you go to the About Us section and the Careers section, there is a link there that has the page where you can sign up for all of these. But also, if you reach out to Andrew Huber, and it's Andrew at c21sheets.com, he can share that information with you as well. But like I said, we do this. It's pretty much every 2 weeks or twice a month. It kind of depends on how that flows. Like this is my 3rd one. This one. Oh, Andrew also has a practice exam. So email him and he can send you a practice exam.
Yep.
I don't even
Awesome.
have that.
Yay. Is his email? Right. Do I
It's
have
in the
his
chat.
email?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's in the chat. It's Andrew at c21sheets.com.
Okay.
So you email him, he will get you all set up with the practice exam and with dates, and maybe dates in severalty. I don't know.
Yeah, we just make up words.
We don't make them up. They're real words.
Whatever, man.
I was just giving you a test
So,
to see if you would just read anything that I put on a screen.
A little early for April Fool's jokes, Christopher.
Well, at least I now know that you will read whatever I put on a screen. So next year when you're presenting at the Gold Awards, don't use a teleprompter. Watch out.
Fair enough.
All right, that's all I have for this evening. I do want to thank all of you for being here, but also thank you for Todd and Andrew for joining me this evening. Like I said, a lot of times it's maybe one of them joining, but I have the COVID. That's so it's been hard for me to talk, and so I asked them to co-host for me this evening. It's been enjoyable. So thank you very much.
Yeah, guys, can't say it enough. We're in this together. So if you have any questions, I had my cell phone in the chat. You have my email, ask. Like Christopher said, not only is there no dumb questions for Cram your exam, there's no dumb questions about this industry. It's a big industry. It's a big decision. A lot of stuff in front of you. So ask questions. We'll have answers.
Yeah. So thank you, Todd. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Have a good night, everyone.